Beautiful. And so for that process, can you see on your end who's live? Is there a chat for the
Yeah,
participant?
there's a chat box on YouTube. Maybe we can focus on that on the second part.
That's right.
The first part, we're going to focus on the chat on.
Okay, we're live on
Instagram.
YouTube.
Second.
Beautiful.
Perfect. All right. So if anyone is already there on YouTube watching, welcome. We're going to switch to Instagram in a couple minutes. And yeah, so Mark, I'm so excited for this conversation. And I know that this is the first of many. I look forward to the moments where we're going to be back again and enjoying people and social interactions and actual, busy, messy kitchens and dining rooms. And we're gonna be there soon. But for now, we have to enjoy this responsibly in online. Right. So let's get started on Instagram. I'm gonna go live. Perfect. Holy shook. What I need to do.
Let me come join you.
Yep. And I need to do a little. I'm not signed in on Instagram on this phone. I'm just gonna do a little setup here. Again. Password. Okay. Almost there. Perfect. Okay. Starting the live in a second. Headphones on. Let's go.
All right, brother, I'll join you.
Yeah, and Mark, if you want to, don't forget to mute on the laptop so you don't hear that. You hear me through Instagram. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Hello. We're live here with Mark already on YouTube here on this little computer here. We are on a Zoom call, live streaming on YouTube, and we're right here on Instagram. Here's Mark. Welcome, everybody. Bienvenidos a todos y todas. Gonna bring in Mark. Perfect. Go live. Let's go. Hello, Yin. Nice to see you here. Ciao a tutti quelli conectandosi dall'Italia. Hello, people from Turkey. Hello, Mark in Vancouver. How you doing?
So good, brother. Great to be here. Really great to be joining you.
Yeah, such a special connection. I feel very blessed that we're having this space to connect, to have a chat, to go deep into each other's minds and missions, and to do so publicly here on Instagram is amazing chance that we have. And so, yeah, thank you everybody who's joining from Argentina, Portugal, gente Ecuador, ¿cómo están? Saudi Arabia, thank you for being here. Raya, Costa Rica, so cool. Thank you so much for joining us. Hola Yesenia, gente Cali. We have a lot of Latin American folks out there connecting. Turkey. Right, so let's get started. How are you feeling today, Mark? When you woke up this morning, what was on your mind?
I'm carrying a lot of different energies, and
Mm-hmm.
today was no different, right? And so I think the practice has developed over this time of the global pandemic of holding love and patience and curiosity and opportunity over here. So I try to keep those centered, but of course they hold this bowl, while over here is of course pain, suffering, what's happening to people who do not have the opportunities, the people that we serve who are marginalized, like all of those things are very much present too. So honoring both of those and figuring out where they converge for us to create opportunity. And of course, I woke up excited to hang out with you because we always have so much fun, and I'm excited about all the projects that we're working on. It's great to see you
Yeah,
guys.
absolutely. Same, same. You are a fantastic inspiration. Like since I, so the first of all, everybody, like we met because dear friends of ours that we trust immensely, that we love, in order, Brandon, Dave, and Tia, said you two need to connect, right? And there's these friends that we really trust just told us,
Mhm.
you have to be in touch. And so for the first moment, we knew that this was going to be special, and so and I've been really kind of just impressed at watching your talks and at seeing at at presencing you speak, and the way that you time your words, the time your intention has been teaching me how to kind of go deeper into using voice to express intention, and of course the work that you've been doing, um, with a Better Life Foundation, and the many businesses that you run, and how you manage to bridge the gap between things that seem completely disparate, right? You are an activist, you are a businessman, you are a systems thinker, you are an artist of sorts, an entertainer. Like, what a wonderful human. So tell us a bit more about how you got where you are. What's been the driving force in your life for your work?
Thank you, brother. And what a beautiful introduction. Every once in a while, I also cook too, which is the kind
Yes.
of the center point of where we're at. But first, before we get started in the conversation, just want to send huge love to everybody who's here, particularly folks tuning in from all over the world. And I saw tons of Mexican flags go up. And so I love you, Mexico, and can't wait to get back. We recently put together our board and advisory board in Mexico City and Monterrey, Mexico, and we're going to continue our work there. And I'm really excited for these false borders, which you and I have talked about before, to reopen to travel so that we can be together. But a little bit about me. Right now, we're in Vancouver, and the downtown east side is just outside my window here. And the downtown east side of Vancouver is one of the most marginalized neighborhoods on the planet. And so it seems crazy to people when they say you live in Vancouver, British Columbia, and it's marginalized. I don't understand. Canada has so much bounty, they don't really know poverty. Well, outside here is one of the densest areas of homelessness, mental illness, addiction, and just really pain. And so I've worked in this neighborhood, opening restaurants, opening businesses since 2006. So for 14 years, I've owned businesses and worked here in the neighborhood. And in about 2010, 2011, after doing casual fine dining restaurant, cocktail bar, sushi restaurant, all of the stuff, gallery, live music venue, etc., with artists, with friends, I realized that we had a much larger role to play. And I started to have my own self like awakening and understanding that the people who are serving in this neighborhood, it's not us and them, it's just us. And so what I say all the time is if a community is unwell, we're all unwell. And so I noticed my own mental health, my physical health was just tanking. My addictions were spiking. And I was like, I have all the things that I ever wanted. The businesses, all of these things are present. So why am I so unhappy? And I was unhappy because unhappiness was all around me. Pain was all around me. And so we pivoted as an organization in 2010, 2011, and started working on social enterprise. Before that was a set of buzzwords, and creating systems in food that employ people who are formerly street entrenched, who have what I say diverse abilities. I don't like to say the word disability. I don't believe in it. I think we all have different superpowers, and Those are focal points for us, and they allow us to show up beautifully in the world. So we have culinary programs, and we put out, right today, we'll be putting out about 1,900 meals every single day to what are known as single room occupancy hotels or transitional housing shelters. We predominantly focus on women and children fleeing violence and indigenous populations. So we service where I am, and I'd be remiss not to recognize where I am, which is on the traditional lands of the Musqueam, Snohomish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I'm very, very blessed to be on this land. So we try to serve and to give back and to honor and understand that food is a basic human right. And that we've got lost in that. So my work encompasses that. It's a little bit about it. But as you mentioned, I've also run a charity on 3 different countries called the Better Life Foundation. And a Better Life's, the core tenet of what we do is create advocates. So I like to say that I'm an advocate factory. And as people, advocate factory. So when people look at creating advocacy, we've gone about it the wrong way, and we go about it with aggression and anger. And so we know what the energy of aggression and anger feels like when it comes towards us. We don't want that, right? We're like, okay, I don't. Yeah. And so we make people feel small for not understanding the problems. And if we happen to become more aware quicker, we belittle people. And I think it's really important to be able to allow space for people to ask questions and to grow and to learn and to understand. And so that's what we do. And we do that through dinners. We do it through speaking. We do it through convening and teaching. So that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I just want to reflect on an aspect that you shared, right? We have this tendency to, on topics that matter, on the topics that matter the most, we tend to just create polarization, right? And when we understand something, when we grow through something, we learn something new, we become an advocate, we care for a cause, and we go to it in a way that sometimes is based on that anger and that frustration. And we tend to shock the other side, which is actually a disservice to the greater cause. I'm thinking, for example, of all of us who, who think, or folks maybe who are watching, who really care about animal ethics and that choose to have a vegan lifestyle, and then to try and convince others, they go from that place of anger for the animals and anger for justice in the way we treat certain living species. And so then we shock against the person who sees a different worldview, and then we create polarization when really we care about the same things. 95% of the things that we care about are the same, and we focus on the 5% that kind of polarizes and disconnects in speech and in action. And so I find it beautiful that you create advocates really understanding that there is this other space that needs to be inhabited if we want to accelerate change, because in the end that's what we hopefully just want to be of service to. And so I just wanted to reflect on that you shared, and I want to just, for everyone in the audience here, to understand the scale of the work that Mark has been doing. So there's this number, 2.4 million meals for those in need. That's the scale of the work that you've been doing, helping, facilitating 2.4 million meals being served for people who need it. And it's much more than just a plate of food to cover for nutritional needs. Tell us a bit about how you do that.
Yeah, I mean, well, the first part about that is my team, right? My partner, Ash McLeod, my team that operates here in the downtown east side, my managing director in the US. Like, these are my partners, these are my peers. I love them, they're family to me, and we work together step in step. And so I think there's, we see stories about individuals, and it always upsets me because I'm like, this is a team. So you look back in some of our media stuff, you'll see me and a team. And that team is really responsible for how everything happens every day. It's their energy, it's their ability to work in the cold face of the work, and to deal with overdose, to deal with all of the things that we see in our neighborhood, to deal with death. And their resilience is what it comes to, is like how we get to the place that we get to, right? It's their innovation, it's their ability to pivot. And it's my deep honor to be able to be in leadership there, but also to be in servant leadership. So every opinion matters. All of these conversations matter, and consistently you have to respect the push-pull of the discussions that are happening in your organizations, because there's blind spots, right? Constantly. So if my team wasn't with me, none of this is possible. None of it's possible. And so, yeah, I love them, and I appreciate the way they show up. And then, of course, the people who are intrinsic to our entire food system, Charles. You and I know this like the back of our hand, right? So in COVID, we're faced with, particularly people who are marginalized, there's usually a plethora of food options in the street. So people come down on the weekend and they'll be like, here, we're doing a soup thing, or we're doing a curry thing, and all sorts of different religions come down and do different stuff. All of that ended. So food is no longer available. Soup kitchens are not a thing. And I hate that terminology, but you know what I'm saying. So we had to up our impact really quickly. And here's the beauty of humanity. And so when I say team, let's go outwards further. Our community and the people who support us. I put up a post on the internet and said, I know food suppliers are struggling right now because restaurants have all closed. I have some money, not a lot. If you need help, please reach out and let me see if I can purchase and put into our meals. Nobody did that. Nobody did. Everybody else was like, I just want to give you food. So they heard my request to help them, and they flat out refused it. And instead were like, here's all of this food that we can't move. And I mean multinationals to radish growers and everybody in between. And those forged deep relationships. Now, because of my team, which is that larger group, we're able to be nimble and figure out brand new systems to feed people in the long term. And so that's what I'm most grateful for, is humanity's ability, when they trust and when we're in conversation and in love with helping others, and we put others before ourselves. That's how this stuff works. And that's when it's at its truest superpower, right? That's it.
It's beautiful. And so one thing that I find an incredible superpower and a kind of a blueprint that you've managed to develop, and I see a full potential eventually being achieved in the future with this, partly, you know, and I really see the model that you've created as something that should be reproduced in every major city in the world. And we're going to go closer to the theme of this conversation that we chose, that you suggested, which is food is our birthright. And as humans, right, we wouldn't be who we are in an evolutionary story if we hadn't mastered the control of fire and the transformation of food and the use of fire to preserve these foods, to basically survive and thrive. And around the hearth, around the place, around the cooking pot, around the fire is where society was first built, right? And this is where we learned, and we basically hand in hand with other species and the forces of nature, we were able to evolve as humans and as societies from that place of sharing food. And today, we've created a society that, for some reasons, we've disconnected us from our very most basic kind of humanity, which is to have a plate of food in front of us and people to share it with, right? And have this empathy of like, oh, we have one plate and we're three. Well, that's 3 plates because we're here, right? Which is something that is not seen anymore in our modern society, and especially the growth of cities, right? In the last 100 and something years, where it's been kind of emerging. So food is our birthright, and you have figured out a way to hack the system where you get resources, you get food from food banks, you get teams together, and you go and deliver that extra food that would have otherwise been lost, that the system just provides this, and serve it with heart.
So we do some food redirection. But I want to go to a way cooler place that you just talked about, which is one of my other hats is I teach innovation dynamics and design thinking. Big jargony words. What I teach people is how to design for success, right? So what does it look like to have true empathy for people, right? What does it mean? Well, you have to put yourself legitimately in their shoes, not with your agenda, not with your lens, with theirs. So it means talking to people and really deeply listening. And so we used to do that around the table together when we convene. Truly, that's important, right? So we created this thing as a team because people would come to me constantly, Charles, like all the time, be like, I want to cook with you, chef. So my response would be, do you know how to cook? And they'd say, no. And like, okay, so you want me to teach you how to cook? You don't want to cook with me. You want me to teach you how to cook? Like, no, I want to help you serve the people that you serve. I say, great, but if you don't have that skill, then you're going to come in my kitchen and you're going to burn yourself or cut yourself or do something and take attention away from the task at hand, which is thousands of meals, not 5 or 6. Right? So it's a very big machine, and I appreciate your support, but I would rather you do what you're amazing at to be in support of a cause. And so I would redirect people. I'm a UX designer. That's not helpful. It's super helpful. User experience is super helpful to social enterprises. Let me put you with one that needs some help. I'm an accountant. That's not helpful. It's super helpful. Social enterprises books are a challenge. That's your skill that I want you to like hone in on and do. People were not having it. They would do it, but then they come back and be like, I still want to cook. Like, okay, if you want to cook, I will design for you to get us back around the table. So my team got together and we put together our project called Plenty of Plates. And so you come in with the team, you make a large donation, and you cook 12 of you together for 75 people. So you learn how to do food, you learn how to respect it all, you understand where it's coming from. The new one starts on a farm, the new iteration of this because of distancing. And then when you've done that as a team, you start to really realize who each other are a little bit, and you're working together. Then aprons off, music on, candles on tables in my diner in the downtown east side. Menus printed, put on the tables, just like we're setting up for an event. And then we welcome 75 people from the neighborhood who do not have the opportunity to ever have a sit-down meal like this. And then you serve them. You serve them a 3-course fine dining meal that's culturally sensitive. And you meet them and you talk with them. You guys discuss and you become part of that community. That's the Advocate Factory, but it's really based around our core belief that everything can be solved around the table. Your blood sugar comes up a little bit, your heart rate lowers, you're getting your breath because you're eating, the food is hitting you in all these places. You become aware of what's going on because you're not in fight or flight. In that moment, you're actually in center.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so this project we thought would do okay. It just skyrocketed. And it flies in the face of what everybody thinks about charitable organizations, which is you want to be gentle with your donors. Opposite, make them work. Make them work hard, get them into it, teach them, get them around food, get everybody around food, and get the community specifically around food. So it's my favorite project right now, Charles. And because we're unable to serve the 75 people because of social distancing, we've pivoted it, and we start in 2 weeks that it starts on an urban ag farm that employs people who are formerly homeless as well. And there's an apiary on the farm, which is a partner of ours. So you'll learn about beekeeping, you'll learn about gardening, then you bring that product in, cook it, and then we'll send it out to people who are sheltering in place.
Beautiful. That's amazing.
Yeah, psyched.
And that's amazing. And so you leverage that power of the dining table, right? The dining table is, I see it as this most primal technology that we have as humans, right? And so when we're around a table and when we have food, there is just a different part of our humanity that expresses, right? And I see this kind of dining table as an empathy machine, as a technology that can allow us to achieve a lot of great things, especially when it comes to the greatest challenges of our time. We can educate through this place. We can create social cohesion. We can make people learn on all levels of what it means to be human, thanks to what and how we put it on a table, right? And so that's kind of, I guess that's our tool, really. It's not just the knives and the kitchens and the fires. It's really dining tables and the meal as the meal ritual as a medium, right? Instead of, yeah. So
that social cohesion is like, those are the words, brother. Like that's it. We are the single most connected and disconnected generation that has ever lived. Like I'm looking at 3 cameras right now, but I'm completely by myself, and I've been alone for 4 months in quarantine. That's so sad because we thrive. You and I thrive off being with other humans. Physical touch, just being around, feeling the energy, being able to nourish people and feed them. This existence is very normal for a large part of the population, and not just the marginalized population, right? Where people are living in 8x10s. it's also just become our condition because we spend so much time in the cycle of our socials. We're in it. Like we're in it and we lose the connectivity to real life, to where you, like when you said, I'm going to shelter in place with my dad, dude, I was immediately jealous. I'm like watching you cook the whole time. I'm watching you spend real quality time. I know family relations are challenging, but like watching you deepen that, that's what life is genuinely about. That's it. That's all there is. And yet we are disconnected from it by the chase of material things. Capitalism has broken us. It has broken us to chase and continually say, this is not good enough. And in that, we've lost complete sight of what it means to be human, to be connected, to food is everything. So it's our life, it's the energy, it's the planet. We've become disconnected from that. People feed us in cans and boxes, and it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I mean, so when you talk about social cohesion, the way to bring us back together and what you've been doing digitally and what we've been doing digitally teaching has been really interesting to put another tool in our tool belt. It's not our number one choice. Of course, our number one choice is to be together. But if we can't do that, we can do this at least and get deeper understanding, learn about the troubles of our times, about racism, about misogyny, about oppression, about the problems and the perils of capitalism. We're learning as a society at once, which is a gift that we'll look back on. We'll look back on and go, remember this moment where we were forced to take care of each other. It's an important one.
Yeah, it is. This is definitely a turning point in the history of humankind. I recently read an article on the Financial Times. I shared some text on stories the other day, which is pandemics are a portal, and historically they've been a turning point in history, right? After the plague, we had the Renaissance, right, in Europe, and so I think there's an opportunity that we have, I guess, to just see with new eyes what we've been doing. And a lot of people saying, well, that normal that we had last year, that wasn't normal at all, right? And so now what is the normal that we want to live? And of course, we have a huge infrastructure, like a hardware of human civilization that is very wired and kind of there to serve, but it's a tool. It's how we use that hardware, right? So where is the upgrading the software and the operating system that we need right now in order to be able to address really ethics in terms of moral values, in terms of being a species that has morality at the center, because many of the things that we do for moral things have underlying implications that are not moral. And so what is our belief system? Because with morality comes the question of, okay, the morals are just an expression, systems of laws that just express, right, a certain belief system. But what is our belief system is the question. So now, how do we find ways to refine and define this new set of morals or belief systems? And I have no doubt that eating around tables will help us figure the answer, right? And putting more intention in changing, in the ingredients and in the relationships with the farmers, putting that first, and in the relationship with the nutrients and the impact and the amount of water that went into growing that particular food that we're putting there. And that's kind of how we choose what we put on our tables, and it is maybe the most important political act that we do on a daily basis. Anyways, just went on a little tangent there, I guess, but
it's a great tangent. And before you step away from it, I think it's really important to reflect on the gifts we've been given in that energy right now, right? So when global systems of shipping were frozen, what happens to the food system? Ooh, beautiful, super interesting. We're finding out cities were only producing 2 or 3% of the food for their entire town. What? Where's it coming from? Oh, it's coming from massive, fully GMO farms. Well, yeah, we know that, but we're not making the choice because we're firmly made to believe that it is cheaper for us to consume mass-produced products when it's not financially cheaper, first of all, at all. You just have to do a little bit of digging and figure it out. Yeah. If you lived in what's known as a food desert, I hate that language because it's not real. A food desert is the Sahara. If you're stuck in the middle of the Sahara, you're in a food desert. Otherwise, you are in food apartheid.
Oof.
These are places that have been designed specifically against race. That's what they are. There's a gas station, there's a liquor store, there's a McDonald's. We don't want you to have access to food, but that's okay because you can grow it. You can either grow it yourself or somebody else or as a part of a co-op. And this is what we're changing to have a look at is what does this mean? What does it truly mean, right? So in our moment of not being able to get everything we want, I can't get my Frosted Flakes. What am I going to have? Well, there's all of these other things and awakenings. So we're in this moment of design of choice, this real moment of design of choice. And so you've got all these farmers proliferating. They're just coming up and be like, I can get a box to your door because we have all the technology. We have delivery technology. We know how to do all of this stuff. And so we found here in Vancouver, there's a couple of really cool suppliers that would normally just be direct to restaurant. Said, no, we can expand. The farmers need to sell because the restaurants are closed. And they started making an entire commercial grade website at wholesale pricing, direct to consumer. So you're buying, let's call it a ribeye. If you were like, instead of $112, it might be $32. And you're starting to understand the true cost. Right? The real true cost of things. You're like, wait a second, why? Also, why do I need to consume this much? I don't. What has been bred into me to understand? Like I have to continue in the system, but the system is totally broken. And so we have this opportunity for people. Also in the restaurant business, all of this stuff hit the front pages in North America, which was, we don't pay restaurant workers enough. All right, the system is completely broken. We can't charge patrons enough because fast food has led us to believe that everything should be $8 and $9 or $10 when it needs to be 40.
Yeah.
If you go to have somebody cook you a meal, don't think about what you're paying for on the plate. You're paying them to do the work, right? So how do you do that? And it's really important to reframe all of these industries so that people can feel comfortable and safe. And it's been really great. And I love our explorations of this stuff together. It's been super fun.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in terms of words, it really struck deep when you changed the paradigm from thinking about food deserts to food apartheid, right? Because that's what's really happening. Sorry, I'm gonna sneeze. Gone. It's gone. Thank you. The lost sneezes. But you talk about food apartheid, and there's really, I don't want to, I don't know how to get this. I just think it's so important that we talk about the things that we don't even know we don't know. And in many cases, us living in cities have no ideas what's actually going on, and we don't know the history of things. I was talking just recently with someone telling me, oh, how the future of restaurants, how it's going to work. And we need to understand that modern restaurant and modern food system was developed mostly in the late 19th century, early 20th century, as a byproduct of industrialization, of let's say a machinization of our relationship to nature. Everything before the steam engine moved at the speed of cows, right? Because you would have like a cart and with your cows, and you would move your food at the speed of cows, and the growth of a city was at the speed of cows. Now we have steam engine, and that growth that we wanted, that was inspired and kind of drove a lot of forces to go for more profit, right? For more and more and more, and scaling and growing, right? That bubble never stopped growing, and now it's about to burst. And that bubble is what created systems of oppression. And when I say systems of oppression, we don't only talk about, because we talk about systems of oppression often when we think about systemic racism and marginalization and food apartheids, as you say. But there's also, just think about it in terms of nature, and just as a systems level, systems that oppress like human intentions, because this is human, and no other life species will be oppressing another one. There's always a balance, but we tend to just have this very strong capacity to oppress other systems with humans and with natural systems, right? So we're oppressing the systems of the ocean right now because of the amount of plastic that we're pumping into it and the amount of fish that we're extracting from it, right? So how to dismantle these systems of oppression that's, and in a way that, coming back to where we started the conversation, that doesn't get, that doesn't, start the conversation from a place of anger and friction, but rather from a place of
Mm-hmm.
building and a place of just understanding the weird conundrum that we've created in the past century and that we're messing up. So where do we start activating
It's a
that
great
kind of
question.
new paradigm? Yeah.
Yeah. So the tool that I found most useful is taking people out of self.
All
So
right.
when you put it towards other, right? So here's the dilemma. You don't talk about other as a group that they can't understand or physically empathize with, right? So it's challenging, and we've seen those empathy campaigns work in short. But when I say to you, do you have a child?
Mm-hmm.
And somebody's like, yes, it's my whole world. I'm like, great. They're not going to have one. Period. It's not maybe. It's they are going to be living with masks on high ground, eating whatever remains, instead of having the freedoms and the joys and everything that we've expressed, unless we start to make critical changes. And people are like, that's ridiculous. Like, is it? Is it really? Like, you just need to have a look around at what's happening right now in this moment and understand that there's supply and demand. If there's a limited amount of something, if there's 10 of these and we're consuming 25 a day, and like just math, very, very, very simple math is going to get you into a place where you understand that that person that you love more than anything, that you would take a bullet for, will not enjoy the freedoms, cleanliness of air, of water. They may not have clean water as they age. That may no longer even be a thing. They may never get to enjoy fish if that's something they want to enjoy. They just won't have this. So that on top of their health, what is their health going to look like? What is our health going to look like? And so when I take you even a step further and say, would you think that you'll have grandchildren? Imagine what their world will look like. Now, do you care? Do you care? Like, is that something that is going to then evoke an emotion in you enough to stop you eating drive-through cheeseburgers? And people are like, you know what? I love cheeseburgers. Like, if you can't reconcile those two things, I'm not sure where to go. So then you use the communication tool of food and you talk about it, because if you introduce people into something that they love equally or more, and then they can reconcile that behavior, it's way easier. So what you do through the introduction of food, and what we like to do through the introduction of food, is like, have you ever genuinely, I like to use romaine lettuce as an example. Have you ever truly eaten romaine? And if you feed somebody a garden romaine piece of lettuce, you require no seasoning, maybe a little bit of olive oil, maybe a tiny bit of salt. But if you get romaine that's been mass manufactured and insert tomato or apple or anything else, you start to realize how beautiful and delicious and incredibly nourishing food is. But what we're used to eating is basically a styrofoam remanufacture of food that is pumped full of so much that it doesn't land for us, that it makes our mouth tingle, that it makes our stomach hurt, that it makes our brains fuzzy, that makes us tired. It's doing the opposite of what food is supposed to do. So if I can introduce you to that, and then you start hunting for that constantly, you come further away from the mass-produced system, and you also impact those in your general circle. Now, when I say to you, do you care about your kids? You're like, I'm planting a garden in my backyard. That's how much I care about my kids. But if I just bring the aggression to you, it doesn't work, right? It doesn't lock, because you go into panic, you go into fight or flight. Like, oh, what do I do? So am I going to preserve just this unit? Is where you might go to, right? And versus, we can all enjoy this. There's enough resource. And I say this all the time, and you know this, the abundance versus scarcity conversation. There's so much. And if we were to respect the land, the ocean, all of it, if we could actually just start to respect it, it will nourish 50 times as many people that are on the planet right now. No problem. Readily and easily. This is not a population issue. It never has been a population issue. It's the way that we consume and the way that we produce. Those two things just do not line up with the planet. So I'm going to step down off the soapbox for a second and take a breath.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So first of all, I want to make a little pause, and I want to invite you all who are here. First of all, thank you for watching and being there. And I see lots of friends who are being there from Patron. Hello, Eleni, from being there. Apparently, Mark, you were also involved in this Future Food Institute kind of talks. Yeah. And so I just want to invite everyone here, whoever has curiosity about any particular question that you want to ask. If you want to pop in questions here, we'll try to grab a couple questions and answer directly to you. So we see you, I see the comments there, and so really appreciate you being there. And so, anyways, if anyone has questions, feel free to jump in. And connecting to while some questions arrive, connecting to what you were saying, it's so easy, particularly these times, to just so much going on, so much information about this is what you should not do, that we tend to get to a place as humans where we should fight, flight, and froze. This is what we're in the moment where a lot of us are just frozen. It's like, where do I start? Like, do I have to move to the countryside? Like, do I what like, and many of us don't have the opportunity to, let alone kind of mobility and going able to actually live more in tune with the land, but just like to even think about any type of change that doesn't cost us security and that doesn't cost us financial peace, right? A peace of mind. So where do we start, right? Where do we start? And one thing, and I have this question for you, right? Because I've answered already, and I've talked about this already before. I'm happy to give my 2 cents after you, but I would love to hear you. Where do we start?
Well, the questions that are coming in are directly in this vein. So thank you for asking them. Thank you for
there we go.
The energy there.
I wasn't
Charles.
reading those, but
like that's literally what we're talking about is knowledge, right? And so if you think about all the great famines that have struck, all of the things that have happened for people, we managed to get through them through knowledge. I'm not suggesting in any way that you are going to flip a switch and have a backyard or an apartment full of carrots. It's not going to happen for you, right? But if you start to understand what's around you, I'm currently doing a project with ABLF USA, Better Life Foundation USA in New York, where we are mapping every one of the boroughs, right? And in every one of those boroughs, who takes food stamps or SNAP that has healthy food. So bodegas run by people who are Muslim potentially, definitely always have healthy food. What does it look like to have access? First of all, access is critical to this conversation. So if it's there, how do you get to it, right? So if you want to start locally in your community, you radically support those things. You say, I am not going to order from Amazon. I am not going to order from Instacart. I am not going to shop at Walmart. I'm not going to do those things. I've chosen that's not going to happen. I'm going to a bodega. I'm going to go to this spot. I'm going to learn how to cook that. And so in that, and if you go to my Instagram, anybody who was not already friends with me, when the pandemic started, I started teaching people how to cook in batch. Things like shepherd's pie, stocks, soups, like why they're important, why they create incredible flavor, how to use. If I bought a chicken for $9, how many meals can I actually stretch out of that chicken?
Yes.
So many.
Yes.
So many. If you want to respect the life of that animal, everything. I want you cracking the wishbone with somebody at the end of it. Like all of it matters. So how do you stretch that for your family, for yourself? If you eat a vegan lifestyle, no problem. There are always, and especially in North America, Asian, Chinese predominantly markets within distance. And in them, they have really good produce that are generally grown locally by other people of same descent. And the pricing is so cheap, but you have to understand how to cook with interesting vegetables. What a gift that you get to give yourself to learn how to support them, how to learn about culture, how to learn about racism against that. Like all of those things are a gift to you to then learn and produce. And when people do their first like batch cooking, you feel like a superhero. You're like, oh my God, I just cooked for my whole week for like $15. How did I do that? By supporting people who are local. Yeah. And it's all here, and they're connected. So my thoughts are just get radically connected to what's local and what's there. And then also evaluate if where you're living, if where you've chosen to live does not serve you.
Yeah.
So people who are living in a city center, or you're living in Los Angeles or New York City or Paris, your access may be different. And it's not to say that it's better. And if this is something you care about, you might want to consider long-term where you are living and what the access is for you, or what your passions have become.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Those are my thoughts, Charles.
Yes, thank you. I want to highlight a couple questions that were posed, but I want to build also on what you just said first. One thing that I share, two things that I will share. One thing that I often share, and the other one a little bit more kind of recent. One is whatever you can do, because I saw a few questions like, if you don't have the means, if you don't have the access, like what do you do? Right? The smallest thing that you can do, just do that. The first step, the little first step, just one foot in front of the other. That's how we walk. That's how we get to the moon. It's just one foot in front of the other, right? So that next step, small as it is fundamental. And in that sense, we can, like, all our footsteps are the same. We all have two legs, hopefully. And if you don't, maybe you have a super ability, a diverse ability, right? But the point is, like, the metaphorical point I want to make is that we can all advance at the speed of our choices, at the speed of putting intention into what we choose, right? And that might be one day saying, remembering before going to drink something, oh, please, no straw. You might say that this is ridiculous. Yeah, just one less straw. That's not going to make a difference. It is, because you are committing to yourself and to what you think, to your morals. And you're reminding yourself to show up for that you care about, right? One thing, one step after the other. The smallest thing counts. And everyone's power, small as it is, creates waves or tsunamis, right? So that's one thing. The second thing I wanted to share is this long game. Just like as you were sharing, like maybe you cannot move from a city, but what if you question that? You still have, in most cases, years and decades to live. You can play the long game in your mind. My dream is in 5 years, I'm going to be there, right? This is what we need to think about now. It's the long game. It's not the next year, not even this 2030 goal that we've set up as a species with kind of international kind of, let's say, politics of these sustainable development goals and trying to reach these goals by 2030. That's important. But think about 2050. As you were saying earlier, Mark, what about our children? What about 1,000 years ago, right? How do you want to be remembered as an ancestor? So that's the long game that we need to start putting into action now. I want my children to grow in a world where they are taught about food from the moment that they are aware of having a self, that they could recognize themselves in a mirror. There's food around, and there's education around food, right? And that's kind of how I envision that. So those two aspects that I think, the shortest game and the longest game, how can we just find the peace in asking the right questions about those two and being consistent with our identity and who we are in our decisions and moving at the speed of choices that we make on a daily basis.
Definitely. And I think there's a question here that's really important before you go to the next one.
Please.
Because it came up a couple of times today, which is how do you make time for it? How do you, it's fine and dandy to talk about all this stuff, but how do you make time to cook? And so I really want whoever's on here to listen and hear this part. You have time. You definitely have time. When you get to cooking and understanding and batching it, you can be preparing things and other stuff can happen for sure. But more importantly, all of the time that you spend going out to get food and procuring it or ordering it in, and the money that you spend, your matrix is just set up wrong, right? So when you start to think about, I want to spend quality time with my kids, do it in the kitchen. I want to spend time with friends, do it in the kitchen. I promise you, you'll have no better experience. Kids is where I've been spending all of my time during COVID, and we've been teaching this thing called Sharpen Up digitally, specifically to Black and brown cultures, specifically in the Bronx, Oakland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, digitally via Zoom, 15 at a time. We deliver groceries to the house based on preferences. We get together and we talk through stuff. The feedback is insane from families being like, I didn't think my kid would care about this. I didn't think my kid would want to learn about this. We have kids who are 10, 11 years old, pan-searing whitefish, literally blanching grains, making sauces, because it's not hard. It's really, really, really easy. We're just told it's challenging because the hierarchy of the white coat chef to the home cook is disproportionate. I would, 9 times out of 10, no offense to anybody else in our industry right now, rather eat from a Jamaican like food cart than I would to sit down to anything Michelin. It's just not for me because I believe in different things. I love that experience now and again. I love it now and again. It's an experience. But day to day, I want you to believe in your cooking. I want you to believe in your abilities. I want you to understand that convening with your family and with your friends to cook, you have time. You do. There's 24 in a day. You can use 6 to 8 to sleep. I know that working 2 jobs definitely takes a lot of time, but you have to make time for it. And if you prepare yourself for the week by cooking a bunch of what we would call mise en place, your fridge is full of these trays of roasted vegetables, and then you just get to assemble and play. Put them all in a pot, close the lid, seasoning, off you go. And it's really that simple. And so I want people not to think that they don't have time, because you have to make it.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. And it's all about kind of how we set up priorities in the end, right? And if we want to care about something, we will always find a way. And we're extremely creative. And I think one of the, hard, yes. And, talking about beauty and growth during these times, always just want us to remember also the pain that's costing us and the trauma that is being created all around the world because of the pandemic. But there's the beauty of us being able to realize and put some things into place of like, well, this is important. How many people are growing their basil on their window? Well, that's a very important step. Your basil might die, but if you're committed, you will do it again, and you will put it in the nicer, bigger pot with more soil, and you will make sure that it has the right nutrients, and you would give it the right amount of water and the right amount of sunlight, and you will have a flourishing plant of basil, and you will understand something about life that nothing else can teach you, which is you, the plant, and your relationship, right? But you got to be committed, right? And then again, it's about how we choose our choices and how we commit to them, and how we and how that really represents what we believe in. And it almost becomes your religion. Your religion is your choice, is what you choose to say, what you choose to do. And if you connect with that, because the word religion comes from religare in Italian, in Latin, which is reconnecting and connecting, right? It's about connection. What do you commit to connect with? And that really kind of moves your core to a particular way of being or another. Anyways, that was, yeah.
No, it's beautiful. I feel like I'm at the Church of Charlie right now. I'm into it. I'm praying at the altar of Charlie. I'm here for it, man. Connection is it. That's what it is.
Yeah, man.
Right? And all of the rest of these religions, you and I are both tome heads, right? Like we've read through all the texts and the scriptures and studied, and they're all universal, right? The political gain and will of the white man is obviously draped throughout this shit. But outside of that, what we talk about is connectivity, looking after one another, the importance of the earth and managing it and connecting to it, right? That stuff is all the center point of it. And when you start to grow food or have any success, game over. And then you put it in your body, you're like, I did this. Like, no, you are this. You're made of it. It's made of you. We're the same. And when you have that like revelation, you're like, oh, I am never, ever putting in my body again anything that's been sprayed with poison. It's like asking you, here's your lettuce, here is a tablespoon of poison. To eat the lettuce, you have to eat the tablespoon of poison. Are you in? You're like, hell no. But we do it. And we're like, yeah, it's cheap.
Because food safety makes us believe that it's safe, right? And this is kind
lies.
Of regulations and yeah.
Totally. And we want to be safe. We want to nurture each other. We want to look after each other. And again, if anything in this moment, we've seen super connectivity. Even though we're disconnected, our nuclear groups of family and people have just become the center of our day-to-day, our focus. And so many people have awoken to say, I don't ever want to go back to the life that I had. That wasn't normal. There was nothing normal about me working 60, 70 hours a week on my feet, never seeing the people I care about, barely having enough money to get by, living in a debt cycle, and harming the planet. Why would we ever choose to do that? We didn't choose. We were created inside of a system. When we got a chance to step back from the system and say, wait, I don't adhere to this. I don't love this. I don't adhere to it. When we started, we had all of our restaurants, Charles, when everything was booming. I had 11 restaurants, 11 businesses rather, 13 cost centers, all in this neighborhood. I created my dream. My dream. It actually was my nightmare. Because at the end of it, it was extractionary. All of it was extracting. What can I take? Right? It didn't serve me. So everybody thought I was nuts. When we went to create one of the first B corporations and set up the first social impact, like incubator business in this neighborhood, location, worst block in the city, people thought I was insane. I was like, no, there's got to be a better way. And it's going to take us a long time to figure it out, but that's our job. Our job is to try and figure out how to make things better. And as cooks and as people who lead, you have to say, I'm going to do the hard thing. So as humans, period, you also have to make that choice to say, I'm going to do the hard thing. It'll be unpopular. I'll be ridiculed. I'll be criticized. I'll be attacked. All of that is true of anybody who's ever tried to do anything against the system, because people follow. They're like, don't disrupt my comfort, even though their comfort is hurting themselves, everybody around them, and the planet.
Yeah.
So gotta do things differently.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that, Mark. And so we're just reaching the time limit on Instagram. So we're going to move to a Zoom call. If patrons are there, if you want to join us, there's this little link on Patreon, and you can actually spend a bit more time with us and ask questions on a Zoom call. Thank you, Mark, for accepting to have a little kind of longer exchange here on. And you can also go on YouTube, and you can see on my YouTube channel, we're doing a live stream of this conversation. So we can continue the conversation there for a few minutes. But I just want to close here on Instagram. Thank you so much for all of you who are there. Oh, tell us about that, Mark. We have
very, very quickly.
Yes.
So this is an apron made by women who are struggling in the downtown east side. It's a social enterprise. It's for you. This, not for you, Charles. You can have one too. And this is a cookbook that we made that is all about recipes from people who grew up in challenging situations, from trans backgrounds, et cetera, all chefs, that all the proceeds go to a Better Life Foundation. So you're going to share your favorite moment around food on your stories and tag both Charles and I, and we're going to have a look at them together today. And when we find our favorite one, doesn't matter if you live in the Philippines or Mexico City, I'm going to send this out to you as a gift for spending your time with us and getting more involved in food, as we love it.
So hear this out again. Anyone here connected today, right now, if you share with us, put a story on your stories, you tag Mark and myself, and you share with us why food matters to you, or your favorite food moments, right? Something that talks about the meaning of food for you. Share a story, tag us, and Mark will choose the two best answers, and you'll get either that beautiful apron or the book that Mark will ship to your home. So that's a little gift from Mark. So go on your stories and share with us, tag us, and we'll be choosing and announcing two winners before the end of today, probably. Right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Mark, let's continue the conversation on the Zoom call. Bye-bye, everyone.
Absolutely. Lots of love, everybody.
Yeah. Great. All right. Now we shift to this one.
Great. And do we post this?
Yeah, so I'm going to just spend 20 seconds here so I can post the Insta live so I can make it accessible. We had almost 2,000 people connecting on Instagram.
That's beautiful. I'm going to very quickly grab a water and I'll be right back for this conversation. Give me 2 minutes.
Good. Okay. Go ahead. All right. Welcome back, Mark.
Brother, could you do me a favor? Are you able to record this?
Yes, we're recording and we're live on YouTube, so it's going to be, but I can also record on Zoom if you want.
Great. That'd be great if you could.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see just a second here. I'm going to post this. We have 8 people in the waiting room. I'm going to let them in a second. Just going to put this here. Mark. What is right? Okay, post. Good. All right. Thanks for everyone watching on YouTube. Thanks for your patience. So I'm going to be checking a little bit the chat now on YouTube. I'm going to let in the patrons. We have 11 patrons here. Oh, hello everybody.
Beautiful.
Welcome.
Faces.
Thanks for the, for showing up under such short notice. I see Donna's here, Carito in Buenos Aires, Megan. I have Vanessa in Ecuador, Nidia in Juarez, Sara, Clara. Welcome. Hey, Nicole in Montana. How's everybody doing? Thank you for joining us. So this space is for all of us. Hello, Aisha Natasha. Aisha Natasha is in Copenhagen, right? Yeah. Well, this space now becomes not just Mark and Charles speaking, but a conversation with you all. Do you have questions for Mark? Do you want to reflect on anything we shared in the past hour on the Instagram live? How are you?
I definitely have a question, but it's a deep question, so I'll wait.
What?
You.
No, bring it.
Charles always makes fun of me for asking questions. Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for being here and agreeing to do this. This is really, really cool. So on your Instagram, you talk about your sobriety, and you talked about it in the live. Normally, I wouldn't bring up something like that. But you are open about it, and I really appreciate it. First off, it is something that's very difficult to talk about, especially in a public space. And the way you do it is really fantastic. And I'm wondering how you live in your sobriety in positivity rather than letting that past bring you down in that negative space.
Sure. And what a beautiful prompt, because I think it's relevant to a lot of things, not just so insert anything instead of alcohol or drugs or anything else that we've been addicted to, food, sugar, relationships, all of it, right? This will respond to all of that. And in my personal experience, I had to make a very specific decision to say, are you actually about what you say you were about 100% of the time, or just 65? Because if you're going to be about 65, then why bother? Like, it's okay. You can go back to being a cool guy restaurateur and play records and do all the things. If that's what you're here for, then go do that. But if you're really going to be about it and you're truly going to be in service, then maybe you need to be in your vessel 100% of the time. And to be in that, alcohol does a very specific thing to us, and that is it removes us from our body, our soul, right? And I don't want to get too deep on this part, but you feel the disassociation, and that's why people drink it. And it's like, oh, I want to be disassociated from my pain, and not realizing that you're actually just compounding that there is no escape from you. You are in you. And so eventually you either will or will not deal with the things that created that addiction or that cause of pain. You will or you won't. And the hardest part about sobriety is that you have to have a really hard look in the mirror immediately. And so I don't want to pretend that I was Robert Downey Jr. and like getting caught in 14-year-olds' bedrooms high on heroin. That was not my relationship with alcohol. I was high functioning, right? I'm up at 6 a.m. every day. I'm running 11 companies. I'm speaking. Everything was status quo. My own mental health and my own physicality was in danger, right? So suicide was definitely on the board. It was up there. It was moving up and down, but it was there. And as we know, in our particular industry, it's rampant. And so that is because of the weakness and the lack of connectivity and love for self that addiction created for me, right? So you have to be in an incredibly confident space to do this work. And confidence comes from being in your vessel and loving yourself. So even when others don't love you, which happens a lot, like that's okay, because you realize they're having a visceral experience to something that they are reflecting or mirroring in themselves. And alcohol does, it just like, it's fuel and fire of all of that self-doubt, self-loathing, disconnection. And so when I decided to get sober, I went 100 days before I told anybody. And I literally bought a bottle of Eagle Rare bourbon. I put it on my counter. I was doing a fellowship at the Stanford D School at the time. Greatest gift of my life, to be able to be at a university. I got out of high school with like 75 average, barely. Summer schools, like barely got out. I don't have secondary education. I'm at Stanford with this gift, and I'm drinking. So I got this bottle, and I took a Sharpie, kitchen Sharpie, and I ticked it. After 100 ticks, I made a promise to myself that I was going to tell everybody. Because if I told everybody, my ego would keep me beholden to it, right? And I was like, if this works for me, if this is my trick for self, great. I'm aware of it. And so I came out, and I couldn't believe the support. And I mean, people were crying who were in my circle. I was like, I didn't even realize, because I'm so disassociated with self because of my alcoholism, how bad this was affecting the people close to me. And so once you get that peak and you're really about it, like, oh, I'm never doing that to anybody again. Now, I've relapsed a bunch, right? And it happens where you get tricked by addiction. You're like, oh, I'm fine. It wasn't actually about the alcohol. It was about all my trauma that I've since dealt with. No, you haven't. And so I also want to just say that nobody's perfect. Like, especially in the sobriety journey, you do relapse and you do have these issues. I'm going to write about that on this anniversary of sobriety. That it's a lifelong thing, and you know, imposter syndrome and self-doubt and all of those things that come along with it never go away, regardless. And Charles can speak to this too. Regardless of success, success is a perception, right? It's like, oh, you've been on TV or you've done these things, so therefore you're successful. But that's not what true success looks like. Anyway, I could talk about this for 5 hours without a break, but I appreciate the prompt, and I hope that that's helpful. And if you ever have any questions about it, I'm wild.
No, I just really appreciate you being open and willing to talk about it. It's a big thing, and yeah, I really appreciate it.
Of course, my pleasure.
Thank you, Katie, for that question, and Mark for sharing so beautifully and courageously on the question. Is there, anyone else would like to ask a question, or would like to engage in conversation in any way?
I have a question. So hi, Mark and Charles. It was amazing, the live, like so inspirational. I loved it. And my question, I'm also involved in the world of social entrepreneurship in Latin America. And for me, I've seen like all these journeys for a lot of entrepreneurs. And it always, like at the beginning, you have a lot of like passion for what you're doing, and you start this like project and you want to see it through the end. But you have like really low points sometimes, because as you said, it's not like all the people recognize it, or maybe if you were in this other journey where like you were doing more traditional things. And then, so I guess my question is like, what helps you through these like lows? How do you get through them? And like, what's your tool that really gets you going and keeps you like doing it, even if it's not like successful yet, or if it's not making money yet, or some, because that's very common with social entrepreneurs.
It sure is. We're generally broke. And that's okay. So 3 things that I want to say. First of all, the reason you got excited in the beginning is that your social circles and larger circles get very excited about new. New is exciting to people. It's so exciting. Like, oh my God, this is so great. I love this girl. I'm associated with this girl. By being friends, I'm also doing good. Look at me. And they virtue signal, which we've become very familiar with that terminology, right? But when push comes to shove, you start to see who's actually around. And this is a hard lesson for everybody. So I'm just going to say it like it is. I don't want to candy coat any of this stuff. We don't have time. You're going to find out who's real and who isn't in the moments where it's not easy, right? And that's hard for us to see. And it's also, it's a sliding scale. It's not black or white. It's like, oh, Betty doesn't care about me because X. It's like, no, you can have a conversation with Betty and be like, hey, I really actually need your support when it's not popular to support me. And that's what that's going to look like. When you challenge systems of systemic oppression, which is what every single social enterprise does, it really makes things challenging for everybody around. Because they're like, hey, we're towing this line together and we're working on stuff. Why do you have to do this? And so it challenges your own personal narrative. And so something that I say to myself every single day is that's theirs, not yours. That's theirs. That belongs to them. That doesn't belong to you. So if somebody says to me, you're a fraud, you're not, like they say those things, I'm like, ooh, I made that person hurt and I hold space in my heart for them because whatever they're going through, that's theirs. It's not mine, but I wish peace on them. And I genuinely do. And if you like get into that cycle or that rhythm, it becomes very easy to do. So when you see me talk about addiction, there's no energy there. I'm not nervous. I'm not ashamed. It just is. Just like that's theirs and it's not yours. It just is. It's not hurtful or harmful to you. It can't be. It's not yours. So when it gets really low, what I do is I go out my street and I see all the people that I've served for over 10 years that serve me, that I serve, that we serve together. And I get a smile or a head nod or a check or a wave. That's all I need. That's it. I'm all the way full because that's a real human being doing real things, having a real issue that I'm able to be in some small part helpful with, and vice versa. That's my community. That's what fills me back up. I don't need my mayor to give a shit. He never has, never will. Like that's not important to me. He's got enough issues, right? That's not where we get filled up. It's really about the work. And if you're truly in it, you will see yourself and others and vice versa. So that reflection will just continue to fill you. And you'll pivot and you'll iterate and all of those things that are like design thinking jargon, but just factual. In year 3, I got sued by Cisco, the food distributor, for $500,000. I got sued by a college a couple of years later because they were financially irresponsible. I got sued by a designer. I got sued by the person who co-founded my charity. I'd never been in a lawsuit in my life. And I was like, why is everybody so mad? It's because I was literally challenging them. Cisco, I was like, what are you guys doing? Like, this doesn't make any sense. Why are you trying to do all these markups? I know what this looks like. And when I did that, they hung up the phone on me and sued me because I didn't know that they were a logistics and legal company. And I was like, oh, I got sued by a bunch of lawyers. Whoops, my bad. But then the people who didn't like me already, closeted didn't like me, or didn't like that I was doing something good because it made them uncomfortable, that was their ticket. They're like, oh, knew it, knew you were no good. Because I'm being sued, that means I'm a bad person? No, it means I disagree with somebody. That's what the legal system's for. So that's a large scale analogy. First of all, I won all of those lawsuits on the side. But the other part of that being, like, people are going to challenge that, and you just have to hold strong. And we tell ourselves a lot of things that are negative. A lot of negative talk. And that's because this thing is operating on that all the time. More time that you can spend out of here and spend in here, just listening, breathing, knowing that tomorrow you're going to get up and that it's going to be challenging, but the challenge is going to help define you. It will help. And your body is just, it's so smart. This, not so much. This is just ready to take in all the garbage as well. And like, depends on where you are in life, might just focus on, remember that time in grade 7 when you did the thing? Like, why now? I'm busy. I don't have time for this shit, but it will do it. So I'm actually just about finished a book about this specific topic because I think that people come to the work and then they get really frustrated. And the frustration doesn't come from the work itself. That's beautiful and energizing. It's why don't more people care about this? Whatever it may be, whether it's a rescue shelter for animals, like whatever it may be. Why don't more people care about this? Is frustrating. It's hard to come face to face with. But the biggest one is that you trigger your circle. And your circle starts to ask you questions like, shouldn't you be trying to study to be an accountant? Are you ever going to get a husband doing this? Like, just these classic normative tropes that don't apply to us. Like, that's not what I care about. Why do you need me to care about what you care about? So those sorts of things, I think, as long as you can start to know that is theirs. It doesn't mean you have shut it off. Also, is the other, like, the most important part as I finish this. You don't shut off the energetic exchange. You just don't hold it. You just allow it to pass through you and give it back. Like, I really am sad for you. Instead of fighting. And I think Charles and I alluded to that in the IG Live, which was that aggression just doesn't serve anybody. It won't help you. I hope that's helpful. I hope that does help you.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
My honor.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got shivers in my body when you said that is what the brain does. It's just trying to figure out, almost like operate on worst case scenarios and try to be like, okay, I'm getting ready for these worst case scenarios. I'm gonna make sure that I'm safe, and I build walls and armors, all this. But then if you spend more time here in your body, right, call it your heart, call it your body, you're protected. There's the armor. There's the tool. Anyways, I got a shiver there. I just wanted to share that.
You shared it. I think you shared it with a lot of us after we realized you got it. So thank you. You're passing a shiver around.
Anyone else would like to ask questions? Please feel free to jump.
I feel one coming on.
Hey, Mark, I have a quick question for you. What's a good way to bring some of these topics up in conversation with maybe family members who they're not going to like outright shut you down because they care about you, but maybe because you're hitting some trigger points, they're feeling a little defensive. And so it's hard to bring it up in conversation, but it's important enough that you want to. Like, what are some ways to navigate that?
Sure. So this has got a lot to do with energy, like a huge amount to do with energy, right? And just imagine a classic parental conversation is what I'll use, right? Now, I'm not going to say the T word, and we're not going to talk about that at all today, if that's okay with everybody. So let's just talk about the parental exchange or a family exchange. Maybe a family member has different views, or even a leadership exchange. And in that, when we're triggered, everything is heightened and we stop breathing, right? So we're shallow breath. We're just waiting to talk. We're like, yep, as soon as you finish that breath, I am ready to go in. I prepared my arguments, waiting for this moment to tell you why you're wrong. And I'm just going to step out for a second. 2 blocks from here, I have my first restaurant named after my mom called Bonita. And in the family booth, which was like a big U-shaped booth, I put a quote she said to me when I was 13. And she said, there's 2 types of people in the world only. I was like, oh, this is going to be rich. She said, there's people who wait to talk, and there's people who listen. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. She's like, exactly. I'm like, ooh. And it took me years to figure, she kept saying it. And I started to get more and more receptive because I would stop and listen. You know, like, when you're listening, you're not only listening to words, you're watching visual cues, you're trying to build an understanding of why that person feels that. And so energetically, what you want to do is be for them. Like, say to yourself, I am for you. No matter what, I just need you to know I love you and I'm for you. So if that's a fact, nothing here can go wrong. Everything else just is, and we're just trying to meet somewhere. We're trying to understand each other. And at the end of this, we probably are not going to agree. And that's also okay. Because if we all agreed, Charles and I wouldn't have been on an IG Live today. Because of our dissonance and our disagreement with society, it brought us together, which is going to allow us to do things. So it's good to disagree because it also allows you to grow and to learn on both sides. So we usually go adversarial at it, right? We're like, I'm right, you're wrong. Capitalism is wrong. Yeah, it is for the most part, right? And there's another part of this, which is there are multiple truths. We are all living a completely different experience. I have some idea, hopefully, if I'm doing my job as an integral facilitator, well, I understand what some of the energetic resonance is, but I don't understand all of it. I don't understand what the lens is right now that you're having. So all I can do is be my most truthful self. I can only come out and be like, hey, here we are. So somebody says, Mark, poor people. So I hosted a dinner in Los Angeles just before COVID hit. And it was at a design firm. And it was actually one of our friends was there, Brandon Coffer. And I said at the end of it, everybody had been drinking a lot. I was like, these are my moments. I love when people are drinking a lot because for them, while they may be disconnected, they're here at the moment. I know that sounds hypocritical, but they're here. And so they want to talk about homelessness. I'm like, please ask the real questions. Don't skirt around it. Ask me the real questions or make the real statements. And one gentleman who was sitting on the floor said, why doesn't everybody just get a job? And I watched the whole room kind of go, oh shit, what happens next? And I was like, thank you for having the courage to say that. Thank you, genuinely. And I was like, this is my experience of that. I don't have your full answer. My experience is people predominantly who are unhoused have been sexually abused or physically abused and are carrying deep trauma. So trust is hard for them. And responsibility, as we see it, is hard for them. It's very challenging for them to get back into a place of that. So they're just trying to survive, and going to dig ditches isn't for everybody. Washing dishes for 12 hours isn't for everybody. Would you want to do that job? And we had a longer conversation. I didn't say to him, what's wrong with you? Why would you say that to me knowing that I'm formerly unhoused? Right? That I've had moments like that. Why would you, that's an attack, which is what everybody else was feeling. I wasn't feeling that at all. I was feeling like this guy has that. If he can walk out of here with some new ammunition for himself and for others, that's what a conversation looks like. There's no shame in it. It's quite the opposite. So once that got cracked, whew, it was on. You got to be careful of those moments because for 2 hours, I'm answering the biggest tropes about homelessness. Great. What was the purpose of getting together? To eat my fantastic roasted eggplant? No, it was to talk about exactly that. So if you have somebody who disagrees with you, look at it as a gift. Say, oh my, I can increase my own learnings. I can practice having hard conversation, which, whew, I still pop off. Like, trust me, I've been doing this for a long time, and somebody will say something, I'm like, that's enough. Like, I can't, because I'm human and we all are, right? But you have to hold love, empathy, and space. And then say, how can we discuss this in a way that feels safe for you and safe for me? And just discuss your needs and what that is in a moment. And what will happen for you, and happens for me in the majority of the time, is you will uncover a trauma below that is informing that person's bias. And something that happened to them, or something that happened to somebody they love or care about, or a preconceived notion. I don't have time to cook was one we saw today, which is simply untrue. But it feels very real for a single mother working 2 jobs and taking the train. It feels very real until they have the tools. So multiple truths as well. I think that's important. I hope that answers your question.
Very much so. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, that was grateful for that. And I'm gonna keep with me this very hard and incredible skill, I guess, and just capacity. And I would invite us all to try this at home, which is, when there's conflict emerging, see it as a gift and be like, wait, all right, thank you for saying that, and build on that, right? That's almost like doing the jujitsu, right, move where you get that strength and you just turn it around into a way that comes from a place of empathy and finding common ground, because there always is common ground. Always there will be a theme, an experience that you will be able to bring to the surface that people will connect with. And that will deepen their understanding, especially when we're talking about so many polarizing issues. Thinking of what's happening in the United States with politics, right? And then an election coming up that is not just the US. I'm sorry, but this is the world, right? This is the planet that's at stake. And so how can we eventually facilitate better conversations around the topics, especially when there's a disagreeing perspective, a viewpoint that is different to the one we hold. Anyways, thank you for that, Mark.
Before you move on to the next question, we don't learn martial arts to hurt people. It's not why we learn them. It's important to know. We just want to feel safe. Everybody just wants to feel safe.
That's powerful. Can anyone take note and quote that later? That was super beautiful.
You're recording. You're in good shape.
Yeah, no, sure. Yeah, we're live on YouTube. Great. Anyone else would like to jump in?
Yeah, I think I have, it's not really a question. It's, I guess, to add a little bit to what we were talking about discussions. So I'm from Southeast Asia. I'm from Indonesia. And I've been living in Europe for almost 10 years now. I had a moment the last time I went home, I think, with one of my uncles or aunties. We have like a bunch. When we talk about food or something, when I tried to make a suggestion or maybe just even like a conversation about healthy food or something, then, they quickly, I also get where they're coming from, but sometimes I get very quickly also shut down in the sense, or like, oh, you're just become like one of those white people in Europe and with your like high horse and trying to teach us how to do stuff. And I find it a bit hard sometimes to kind of try and not be condescending, of course, because I'm also Indonesian, but I sometimes also doubt myself in the sense that, have I become a colonizer? Or like, just the way of thinking of like, how do you have any like suggestions on how to, kind of navigate these kinds of conversations? But which is also crazy because before, like my grandma and all of these elderly people, they used to eat more healthy and all of this kind of ways, which has been forgotten, I guess. I don't know. There's like a McDonald's every like 100 meters now in so
that's your
like,
answer. That's part of your answer right there. Please continue to talk. I just wanted to like put a pin in that.
Yeah, I literally have a cousin. She's like 5 years old, and she doesn't eat if she's not eating KFC.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it's like, and then of course my aunt just like gives it to her. Otherwise she would literally not eat. And I'm so angry at my aunt. I'm like, no, you can't do this. But anyways, yeah, I was wondering, how do you navigate between like kind of being condescending to people
Sure.
from your own community? Yeah.
Yeah, well, Terima kasih. Appreciate you.
Sama-sama.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in Indonesia. I was married to the daughter of the Secretary General under Sukarno and Suharto.
Okay.
Yeah, Guna Ria Kartasasmita. So I was part of that family for about 7 years. And this speaks to me on so many different levels. Because the depths of also misogyny, and let's just name it, societally, that occur everywhere. There's not just here. Sometimes we veil it with movements or with action, but other people do not, and other cultures do not veil it. It just is. And so what I found, I had to learn a whole bunch of things. I actually had to convert to get married to Islam, and I was like 23 or 24, and had to do all sorts of crazy stuff. And it wasn't crazy to me because all religions are one in my mind. So I was like, if this is the one that I have to be with for paper, to be with somebody that I love, then I will do that. And what was really interesting about learning culturally all of those same things is I wanted to travel, Bourdain's in my head from being in 20s and living. I was at the time living in Melbourne, Australia, and got exposed to so many cuisines that I'd never once witnessed. And so my excitement as a white person about cuisine that was not, so I got there and they wanted to take me to American restaurants. I was like, please never, ever take me to one of these restaurants. First of all, fucking terrible. Secondly, like, I want to eat everything that you know how to make or that we could eat together or is cultural. And they were like, oh, and my love for that changed habits. So influence is important. If it doesn't come from you, where can it come from? So moving the energy of the influence through education, right, is really important. And on my board in the US is a gentleman named Morgan Spurlock. He did a movie called Super Size Me. And when you think about the power of that film, like what that did for people, particularly North Americans, but also globally around, I'm not eating that anymore, right? So it sometimes has to come from a third party is what I say. And I was the third party in this situation coming through and saying, I actually don't eat fast food. It's not something I'm interested in. They're like, really? KFC in particular. And they're just like, really? You don't want fried chicken? I'm like, first of all, that's not fried chicken. I can make you fried chicken, but that's not that. And what happens to those animals is really not okay. And they're like, really? So you've got elder statesmen who are having a conversation with me, even though somebody's been saying this exact same thing to them, exact same. Now that's frustrating, disgusting, really. And also the way some things are currently working in our system. So what is the outside influence? How do you align with other people? Who are your allies in your family? Who are the allies externally who you can talk to and be like, hey, this is important that we sort of change these behaviors and these mechanisms first here and then here and then here. How do we do that? And groups and teams and support matter. So take it from me to us, right? Take it from self to other and say, I actually think that maybe we could try. I would really love how to make beef rendang. Like I'd love to learn how to make that properly because it's so delicious. So instead of maybe having fried chicken, maybe we want to try rendang tonight, and maybe your niece just happens to love it because there's sweetness in it, there's roundness in it, so there's richness to it. What are the other chickens? Let's get some cane sugar going. Like, what are the other things that we could make that would possibly do that? And getting your niece involved in that cooking, that's a whole different game, right? Does she love you and want to spend time with you? Oh yeah, she does, no matter what it takes. So if it takes cooking with you, she's probably going to be down. So sorry, I went in like 12 different directions there, but hopefully I was just trying to create a systemic sort of understanding of it. And suddenly I really want to go to Lombard. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure. I felt like there was a question coming from Carito. Is that how I pronounce your name properly?
Yes, but I didn't. I don't know why. I'm going to speak in Spanish.
Dale, dale.
Okay. Nada, quería saber un poco en qué momento hubo ese clic. Siento que todo lo que hemos venido hablando es un poco entrenamiento constante de elegir esto que queremos, ¿no? Como todo el tiempo estamos enfrentándonos en la salida de la zona de confort. Mi pregunta es, básicamente, como en tu historia, ¿en qué momento tuviste ese clic de decir, ok, mi propósito es este, tengo ganas de comunicar esto, quiero hacer esto, no sé, como un poco el camino que está hoy y que compartes hoy con nosotros?
Bellísimo. Muchas gracias por esa pregunta, Carito. So, Mark, how's your Spanish? You want me to translate?
I'm like 30%. I was following and then I was like, okay, I got lost.
Okay, cool. So,
in my nervous system, I got like embarrassed. So please tell me.
So Carito shared, there's always this journey that we're on, getting out of our comfort zone to try and find our stance, right? And so Carito asked, was there a moment where you had a click, and what made you click into doing the work that you do today, right? And that purpose that you're feeling through your work.
Yeah. So let's use the analogy of anything that you learn and like reflect it to self, right? So when you learn cooking, let's use cooking because it seems to be something that everybody here is interested in. The first time that you make like a really killer stock or a really killer base or really killer roux, you're like, wow, this opens up a whole different level of my understanding of how things work, right? So then you might add to that. Like the first time you make pasta from nothing, or the first time you make bread from nothing, you're like, okay. The first thing I ever learned how to cook was I made pizza when I was 14 in a mall pizza shop. I got a job there. And I was like, I'm essentially, I'm a demigod. I can make bread. So you get your license, but I'll be making pizza from 3 or 4 ingredients. And so I got that. When you learn that, your power sinks in. And so when things around social impact, your actual ability to change something or to impact something in a positive manner ladders up. It continually ladders internally, and you're like, oh my God, that works. Because we see the scope of an issue. So if I say to you, in the time that we've been on this call, probably this and the Instagram Live, between 12 and 15,000 people on the planet died of hunger. It shuts you down. You're like, okay, what could I possibly do about that, right? Or we talk about any of these massive metrics. And Charles said during the IG Live, he said, everything matters. Don't take that strong. It all has huge impacts, right? So as you uncover your own story, what you want to do is reward yourself by trying to uncover even more of it. And so why did I react this way? So when people around the house used to ask me for something, often I would avoid them. I would pretend I was on the phone. I would cross the street and I would just not interact. I'm like, why am I avoiding that? I'm not afraid. I'm 6'2", 240 pounds. Like I grew up fighting, but not physically afraid. So what's my problem? And my problem ended up being that I didn't want to know my own truth. I didn't want to remember my own trauma. I didn't want to know about it. Right? I was like, no, I am this person. I am businessman of the year. I am all of these other things that people say about me. So I couldn't be that and also have dealt with unstable housing issues when I was young or mental illness. I couldn't have dealt, that can't be true. That's the old me, not the new me. Well, you're all you. Every part of it is you. What they say about you is probably the only thing that isn't you. You won't not internally go, this part of me is businessman of the year. It's not real. What's real about you is your experience and what's happened. So for me, I started to have interactions with people. And one particular person, one sec, I'll get a picture of him. Can you see this? Hold on, let me get the reflection out of the way.
Yeah.
You see this guy walking? So this is Hastings Street. This is where Save On Meats, one of my big businesses, is. And his name is Michael Haggerty. As you can see by the picture, he's holding a football, aka Football Mike. And so I would see him in my neighborhood all the time. And I was terrified to talk to him. And he's like the epitome of cool to me. Right. So he would be doing like prison workouts on the street with like rocks and one arm push-ups and all this stuff. I was like, man, this guy is so cool. And it had like legitimate stick and poke prison tattoos. 2004, 2005. I was like, this guy's incredible. I was terrified to talk to him. Why? I talk to hundreds of people every single day, in the kitchen, out front, wherever. I'm always talking to people. But I was nervous to talk to him. Same trauma. I just hadn't recognized it yet. And one day I walked into my apartment I only had one restaurant at the time, going to my restaurant, like rare day in Vancouver where it snows. And so there's snow on the ground. And that guy was laying down across the street on a piece of cardboard. I'd never spoken to him before. And I was like, oh no, is he dead? Like, I gotta do something about this. And internally, everything just took over. I walked across the street. And I remember this as clear as it was yesterday. And I sort of looked down. I was like, what do I say? And so I like leaned down and I was like, are you okay? And he turned around and looked up at me and went, no. I was like, I knew that. That's why I came over here, was to come and talk to you. And I was like, what's going on? And I said, he's like, I know who you are. I see you every day. I was like, I have a restaurant. Do you want to come and have a coffee? It was like 9 a.m. He said, do you have beer? I said, yes. And we became fast friends. So we went and we had a beer together at 9 a.m. and I started to learn about Mike. And Mike started to work for me probably the week after that, sweeping up all cardboard disposal, keeping my block clear, because he was already doing that in the neighborhood. I would see him sweeping all the time. Needles, pipes, all of the stuff that could be dangerous. When Mike and I started to work together, I started to realize all of the things that I had thought about people who were unhoused or looked visibly mentally ill were wrong. And so I just kept digging in. And our friendship became very, very real. He's one of my best friends. And understanding all of the things that I had misunderstood on that journey made my transition to social impact way easier. Because I already knew from the inside out what issues were housing, the welfare rates are too low. I knew I was studying constantly because I had opened up to how much I could change Mike's life. That was my ego talking. It was actually happening the other way around. Mike intrinsically changed my entire life because I invested in that one relationship. Because of that one relationship, 2.5 million meals. Because of that one relationship, I know Charles. Because of Mike. So anybody's like, how did this happen? I'm like, that conversation, that one time I walked across the street because my body said I had to. I went and had that conversation. So I just encourage you in any of those moments that you feel it. Like you've walked by somebody and been like, I should really go back. I don't have time. And you justify it away. Go back. Go back. Turn around, go back. Like if you feel like you should talk to somebody, your body is the most intuitively like owned instrument and it will tell you. Also tell you when things aren't safe. It'll do those. So trust it. So that was my first instance. And the one that I'll relate to the most, probably forever, is that my relationship with Mike just grew and unfolded, and I learned so much more about what is actually good enough. Right? So you can, and businesses do this stuff all the time. They'll do like one thing, or they'll donate to a thing, or and it's to clear their conscience. It's not to make change. And those two things are very, very different. So if you want to make change, how do you go about doing it? And you're not going to save those 1,500 people that we've just lost. You can't. That's part of what's going on. But you can help save that one. And so how do you do that is the question you need to ask yourself. I hope that's helpful. And thank you for the question. I knew there was something there.
That was great.
Gracias.
Thank you, Carito, for us. Gracias a ti por preguntar. Thank you, Mark, for going there and sharing with us the story of of Mike. I saw you speaking about Mike in one of your talks, one of those many talks that you got a standing ovation. Just like, I'm a fan of you as well. But yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And in line with this question, so Nidia has a question afterwards, but a quick one that Jorge Perez asked on YouTube. Is there any book that you would like to recommend that has inspired you to get to where you are?
So many. Let me grab one. Wait.
Okay. Nidia, ¿quieres preguntar después? Would you like to ask after?
Sí, ahorita que regrese.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, we're gonna go really fast through these, okay? Number one, this is an absolute must-own book. It's called Tell Me About Yourself. It was written by my very, very dear friend, Holly Murchison. It's a short read, but it will help in the conversations that you have with everybody forever. It's going to help you identify yourself, okay? Give you a quick example. This is my friend, Mark. Mark, why don't you tell him what you do? Well, I own restaurants and then I own an art gallery. And I also, you know what? I own a bunch of things. And people kind of just shut off. They're like, okay. Now when people ask me what I do, I say I work at the intersection of food and agriculture, marginalized populations, and helping them find upward mobility while nourishing them. And people are like, what the fuck did you just say? And they get interested and they want to have a conversation about it. Because that's actually what I do. I'm not my businesses. I am my actions. So this book is incredibly important. This is a must read for everybody. Yeah, right. If you know, you know. If you don't, get the book. It's just important to me at all times. There's one white dude I listen to outside of Charles, and this is him. Just kidding. This is an integral book. It's my dear, dear friend, Uncle Bruce Pascoe. It's an Aboriginal, Indigenous man, and it talks about the truth of Indigenous society, food, all of that that's been erased from the Australian continent, applicable everywhere to Indigenous food, but dark emu is really important. This is my guy. So Gabor's just out here. He writes about the downtown east side where I am. Leader, incredible man, but talking about addiction, also how to help understand it. So if you have somebody in your life or you have issues, we talked about sobriety, this stuff is just really important. And Gabor is just follow him, period. And then my friend just finished this book, which is called Take Back the Tray. It's about institutional food. And her name is Joshna Maharaj, incredible chef, incredible. And she did a Kickstarter because she wanted to take a year off and write this book. And it's literally about hospital food, school food, institutional food, where I've spent a lot of time working as well. And it's beautiful and brilliant, and she's the best. So everything there, you need to read.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. It's amazing. To add to our book club list, we have a book club here on Patron, and we do a book every 2 months, which is not enough. I think we should do at least a book a month. Anyways, but thank you for those. I took some notes. Nidia, ¿quieres preguntar?
Sí, es una pregunta con experiencia. No sé si esté bien. ¿Está bien?
Sí, dale, por favor.
Okay. So my name is Nidia, and I was born in the USA, but I was raised in Mexico. But I came back when I was 15. And I thought I was poor because my mom would feed me at the house. I never until I came to the USA ate fast food. So whenever we came here, I was like, oh, I'm poor. Like, I don't eat this and I don't eat that, because all my friends or people around me will eat fast food, or they will eat outside. They will look at me weird because my mom will cook every day for us. And my question is, if you think that changing cultures, or like just changing like a city, literally like where I was raised is like 10 minutes away from El Paso, Texas. And if you think like it's a really like it changes your body, changes your health or what it can be the cause?
I've got a lot to say on this topic, so I want to choose to respond to you in a way that I think will serve a bunch of us. Privilege was identified in my communities as well by the ability to purchase fast food. Privilege was identified by that. If you went with the cool kids to McDonald's, you had money to buy a cheeseburger or to buy whatever. If you had packaged food, especially if it smelled, ooh, that's a problem. It's a problem. So we had East Indian people in my school, Chinese people in my school, predominantly Black, and then white kids, and then mixture. And God forbid you cracked open a curry in the cafeteria because it was on, right? The amount of, what is that stench? What is that? And that's like 80s, 90s, early 2000s. We live in a place now because if anything good has come out of like mainstream chef culture, if anything good, right? There's a bunch of negatives there, but the positives are that we have embraced and want to learn more about cultures and cuisines and understand them. And so what I experience now, and I worked with the San Francisco Unified School District on school food. I did a design workshop with them post-IDEO on how to get kids to eat more food. And specifically, what we found was that we are dealing with predominantly Latin American culture that doesn't want to eat a hamburger. They're not interested. They want to eat what they eat at home. And so we had a beautiful opportunity here in Cali to get all of this gorgeous produce and food into folks, and the people who don't come from that would learn it. And food went up, I think the consumption rate went up 5 or 6% in the first semester back to school because of the changes in embracing the difference, not the other. So I think us as a popular culture, what I'm seeing the shift as being is that we are starting to understand that fast food isn't it. It's not it. I would kill for my mom to have been able to make me a real proper like cauliflower curry when I was a kid. I'm eating mini pizzas out of a box because they're $2 a box, and I feel exhausted. Right? So I think culturally, just embracing that and leaning into it and sharing it is kind of where we're at. And I hope that that answers the question as well. Because I had the distinct, why I'm so excited about Mexico is I, like many North Americans, even though I've traveled all over the world and lived in Nigeria and Australia and all these different places, I still carried the normative trope that Mexico is dangerous, dirty, and different. So I had spent time in Cabo San Lucas, which I'll never go back to, in all of these other tourist destinations, but had never actually been to Mexico. And I went down for a dinner to teach and to cook and spend time in Mexico City, and game over. I just couldn't believe it. I was in shock. And also I wrote about it vocally at how angry I was at myself that I had missed all of these opportunities and years to be in Mexico. That Mexico City was like the better, bigger, brighter, cleaner, more interesting New York. Like, why have I stripped myself from this? Then I went to Monterrey to do some work, and I spent time there for a week. Just blown away by the culture, by the food, by the people. I'd eaten Mexican food cooked by Mexican chefs in Los Angeles, in Oakland. That's not it. You go into Mexico and you have a real tortilla coming out of a stone ground, and you see the corn, you see the maize, you see how it's made. Why would you want to eat anything else? Like, I don't want to eat anything else. Like, I think right now about just being in the Hippodromo and like going to I just want to be there. I can't cook that for myself because it doesn't come from that plant, from that place, from that food. It's not the same. So if I haven't loved up on Mexico enough, let me know. I could keep going, but embracing and leaning into the things, even when it's not popular, makes you different, and different is important. It's not the opposite, which is what we don't want to fall in line, because that's what's gotten us here.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Well, we've been on for almost 2 hours already, Mark, and I know that you had a time limit as well. You've been so generous with us, not only bringing like gifts to the live, and by the way, everyone here can participate, either those watching on YouTube or here on the Patron call. Mark, thank you for those gifts. Thank you for your generosity in thinking, in spirit, sharing your experience. I want to, I'm looking forward for the times where we can all eventually be in a physical space around a huge table and getting the work done on our individual selves, growing, continue our growth, and also with people around us, and with communities, and with farmers, and with try to support that new paradigm that we all craving for. So little by little, right? We have a few decades ahead of us, a beautiful life to live, and our opportunity to make a good deeds in this planet. So yeah, I don't know if you want to share with us a few final words, Mark, but I'm so grateful for you, for everyone here showing up last minute. And I really appreciate. I'm so happy that we're holding this space together.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would want to just reiterate is you're one of one, right? You're one of one. When I decided to lean into exactly who I am, with no apologies or any conformity, my life began. Everything before that, I say, was practice. So just be the most incredible gift that you are. And thank you.
You're one of one. You're one of one. Mark Brand. I want a t-shirt that says that.
We can make that happen. Love you all. Be safe.
All right. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you everyone for being there. See you around. Have a great week.